All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mainly Hoops podcast. Tonight we're reviewing the NBA draft, the first round, anyways, winners, losers, just overall thoughts and feelings about it. Marcus, let's start out with you. What did you think about the first round of the draft here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the top eight players were who we expected to go in the top eight. Top four went pretty much how every mock has had it for the last few months, at least. But once you got to six, I think it was a little bit of a surprise. Nobody really knew what those teams were going to do with the guards. It kind of seemed like Wagler was going to go five, but Mikal Brown Jr. going six was a little bit of a surprise to me. He's a guy that I have a little bit lower on my board. So that was kind of a surprise. Inefficient college player. I just don't know if that's the right spot for him either. In terms of like overall culture to contribute to winning. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Maybe he surprises me a little bit. And then I was intrigued. Obviously, Dusty May going to the Mavericks makes things a little bit interesting, and you figured they're probably going to take one of those three Michigan guys that went in that range. But Morez Johnson going at 9 was not exactly on my bingo card. It's interesting what the Mavericks have for a roster, and Morez going there. With Gafford and Lively both there. I know they both dealt with their fair share of injuries, but and Johnson being a guy that certainly needs to expand his game out beyond the perimeter. He's 12 of 35 this year, I believe, from three. So, if he's going to become what that pick is really valued at, they're going to need more from him in that area to kind of help Coop out a little bit. But I think he's one of those guys that's probably a higher floor type player. I think he's going to be a solid NBA player. But I was a little bit surprised. Mavericks won 23 games, and I felt they could have gone for a little bit more of a home run, trying to be a bit more aggressive for potential over more of a high floor type player. So at least for the top 10, those were my big takeaways. I don't know if you guys share any of the same thoughts.
Yeah, everyone's kind of asking how much Dusty May influenced that decision to draft Johnson. And I honestly thought those Michigan guys were going to go exactly the opposite. I thought Mara was going to go first, and then Yaxel, and then Morez. So it's interesting how that played out. But Cody, what do you think? Do you think May influenced that decision, or how do you feel about the top 10 overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that he influenced that decision, and I think he always loved Morez, even when he was getting him from Illinois last year. And I guess I'm personally a little bit higher on it. Like I actually, on my board, I actually had him 10th. I did have Mara as the better prospect. I had him a little bit higher. Like I had the order of Michigan guys: Mara, Morez, Yax, right behind Morez. But I just think he fits in like pretty seamlessly onto any roster. Like as a 4, like he can switch on the perimeter. I think he's one of the best defensive prospects in this entire draft. I'd put him in the top 3 or 4, and he's an elite offensive rebounder as well with a game that's expanding on the perimeter. I'm not going to say he's ever going to knock it down at a 40% clip on high volume, but I do think it's something that is coming along fairly well. And I think the more volume that he starts to take, I think he can improve there. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mucked up front court with Dallas, but I think, with Gafford and Lively probably only playing the 5, I think Morez can kind of seamlessly fit into that 4 position. But, for the rest of this, like I think it was pretty well on par, like Marcus said, with the first 5 to 6. I mean, I think Brown was kind of always like mocked in that 6 to 8 range, and I actually had him right on 6 on my board, so I was like personally okay with it. I thought Fleming's probably should have gone a tad higher, and Wagler probably should have gone a tad lower. I had those guys flip-flopped. I had Fleming's 5th, Wagler 8th. But overall, I don't really think you can go wrong with the guards that were taken in that range. I think there's 5 or 6 guards that can truly be – actually, it could be more than that. There could be 6 or 7 guards in this draft class that could ultimately turn into into stars. So I'm pretty okay with everything that was taken at the top. I personally, like, if I was the Washington Wizards, I wouldn't really care about the fit at the top. I would have taken Cam Boozer. I thought Cam Boozer was the best prospect in the entire draft. So I thought Memphis did a really good job overall. I think they ended up with Kareem Lopez as well. But for getting the best prospect in the draft, in my opinion, at number 3, I thought Memphis did a really good job.
Yeah, for sure. Those 4 guards, I feel like, were pretty interchangeable. I feel like they could have probably gone anywhere between that 5 to 8 range, and it wouldn't have been a crazy shock. Marcus, who do you think was the biggest surprise of the draft, where you were kind of shocked they went either that high or that low?
Yeah, I think LeBaron Philon was a little bit of a surprise to me. I mean, he was a guy that I thought, being a Celtics fan, before the Bucks before the Bucks got the Heat's pick, I was like dreading the Heat maybe taking Philon and him terrorizing the Celtics for the next 10 or 12 years, because he's one of those guards that, like, the Celtics really struggle with. Like, twitchy, explosive athlete, and he really has expanded his game as a shooter. So him falling to Philly is also not something I love to see either. I think they did very well to get a talent like that at 22. I think there's certainly defensive issues for him, but the offensive end, he's going to be able to, I think, be an impact right away. I think from night one, he should have no problem scoring the ball in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm very high on Philon. Cody, I know you are too. Cody, who do you think is the biggest surprise here in round 1?
It would be Philon for me. That was definitely the biggest surprise. And I think one of these guards was always kind of bound to slip, with some of those teams in the middle wanting to address the front court, and guys like Sturts and Christian Anderson going over him. I had Philon super high on my board. I had him 9th overall. I don't know if that's like kind of a stretch, but I do think he's one of those talents. And I think one thing with him is I think he has an elite, like, intermediate game too, that he was never really able to show at Alabama. He showed like elite touch on some of the floaters that he, elected to take, whether Nate Oates liked it or not. So I think Philon is like truly an elite 3-level scorer that he truly does have star upside in my eyes. I guess I don't know if it surprised me, but just one that I guess I was a little bit higher on Cam Carr going earlier than he did. And I think the Lakers, I think that's a really good pickup for them as a complementary piece I think he has some real defensive upside. Like, he showed some playmaking traits there, but his wingspan, I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it was over 7 feet though, at 6'6". Pretty insane length, and I think he's a really, really good movement shooter. I don't think he's like a crazy creator. Like, he's not going to create rim attempts on his own all that much, but I think he fits in pretty seamlessly to any roster, and I think he has some real upside to be one of the best complementary players in the league sometime down the road. So I guess that one was one that surprised me a little bit. I guess another one would be, Henry Vesar not going in the first round. I thought, someone would at least take a chance on his offensive upside. Like, he can do a lot of different things for your offense. He can be that trail big. You can run through him in the post as like a handoff hub as well. I thought someone would take more of a chance with him. And I think as we're recording this, I still don't think he's been taken. Where are we at? Pick 42, and he still hasn't come off the board, which is, a little bit upsetting, probably more upsetting for North Carolina fans than anything. But yeah, I guess that one surprised me a little bit as well.
Yeah, for sure. This one doesn't surprise me as much, but I just really like this pick, the Dalen Swain pick at 15, I think it was, to the Bulls. I know you're high on him, Marcus, just because you're a Texas fan, of course, but I do love that pick. Let's talk winners and losers. Marcus, who do you think was the big winners of this draft? Let's start there.
Yeah, I think any of the teams that picked in the top 4 are winners. I think all 4 of those guys are going to be really good players. I think, like you mentioned, I think the Bulls in particular are trying to make a shift in the way that they're trying to play. They have looked to get more athletic in this draft. longer on the wings, more explosive. So, getting Swain, Caleb Wilson, I think Swain, of course, has some issues. He's a little bit loose with the ball at times. His jump shot's not quite there yet, but he's shown flashes of it. So I think he's a little bit more of a project. But I think for upside's sake, I think the Bulls had a really good draft. Cody mentioned the Grizzlies had a great draft as well. I think the Thunder did well to get Mara and Sturts. Mara just being kind of a huge body, right? That you can. They're obviously trying. They're trying to beat the Spurs, right? And athletically, I don't think Mara and Wemby is a great matchup, but he has the length to kind of deter people away and potentially help in that matchup. So they were obviously going after that. And then Sturts, I think he's a guy that's going to be able to come in and learn right away from one of the best coaches in the league. Obviously back-to-back defending MVP, Shea. So, there's a lot to learn from in that building. So I think the Thunder did very well.
Yeah, I could see Sturts having an impact right away, just with his shooting upside, of course, and how the Thunder space the ball. But Sam Presti deserves his flowers. I feel like he always pulls off some magic on draft day, and he's just really good at building a roster, clearly. Cody, who are the winners you thought of this first round?
I had the same exact three, so yeah. I think we're in I think we're pretty much aligned here, but I guess I'll just add on to what Marcus said. I mean, I do like the Starts edition. I don't know if I'd view him as a 16th overall pick talent by any means, but I do think he can fit into pretty much any roster because I think he is a much better off-ball player than he gets credit for because we never saw him play off the ball in his entire college career. No matter where he was the high usage guy, but I think he showed that he's truly an elite movement shooter, has a lot of good feel. He can be a solid secondary creator as well with the limited reps that he had. And then, I just thought the Thunder kind of stole Adai Mara. Personally, I had him much higher. I think he has insane upside. I've never seen a 7'3" big pass like Adai Mara does. With elite shot blocking, he's improved as a lateral mover as well. Didn't really see a lot of that at UCLA, but Dusty May was able to, maximize what Mara did really well. And he's obviously a great rim protector, a really good rebounder. So I really like Adai Mara, especially, he's not going to play a massive role early on. I think that's pretty fair to say, but I think he can be a really good specialist. At the very least, he's going to be a very, very good backup big who is just going to be, kind of a one-man defense with his ability to deter shots. So yeah, the Thunder did a really good job again. And then I'll just add on to Dalen Swain. I think Dalen Swain has superstar upside. That's kind of how I labeled it. It's just the shooting, I think, that needs to come along because he does pretty much everything else on the basketball floor pretty well. He's an elite ball handler for his size. He has point guard handles. And I think you can, he can take anyone off the bounce in isolation. You can throw anybody on him. He's going to find ways to have success. He generated so many rim attempts for himself, which I think is something that a lot of people look at when you look at on ball star upside. He had 135 rim makes last season at Texas, and only 17% of these were assisted. So he's doing a lot of this stuff on his own. So, and like we said, the shooting needs to come along, but it has improved each and every year. And he's always been a good free throw shooter, which is something I look at when projecting future shooting. He's an 81% career free throw shooter, was 32 for 92 from three last year, which isn't a terrible number. I think it's more for him is just the reluctance to shoot the ball. He has some times where he's always looking to drive because he's such a special driver and even mid-range scorer. He's just going to have to learn how to play off the ball a little bit more early. And then maybe, he'll get some more on-ball reps depending on how the roster falls with Chicago down the road.
Yeah, I love his game. I really do. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops as an NBA player, just like all these guys. I feel like there's so much upside, especially in this class. So it's going to be interesting how these guys grow and develop on their rosters. But Marcus, let's talk losers. Who do you think lost the draft, or maybe made a couple picks that kind of we weren't seeing eye to eye on? What do you think?
Yeah. I didn't really love what the Hornets did. Like I think Steinbach fills a need as a rebounder. But I am a little bit worried because, like, are they going to play if he's at the 5? Then from a rim protection standpoint, he's not a great rim protector. And then if he's going to play at the 4, like with Kalkbrenner or Diabate, I'm a little bit worried about him guarding a lot of 4s in the NBA. So for me, the defensive fit is really a concern for Steinbach here. Like, obviously, he's a great instinctual rebounder, but as an athlete, vertical, laterally, I have big question marks there. And with the roster that they have, I don't really know how he fits on the defensive end. Christian Anderson's fine. I'm a little bit worried about his frame overall on the defensive end as well. So I don't know as if this class for the Hornets really made them a ton better. Then another team, I don't really think they're talked about just because it's later in the draft, but I didn't really love what the Spurs did. I think Quaintance is fine. We haven't really gotten to see much of him for the last year and a half. But the Tyrese Reed pick kind of made not much sense to me, right? Because he's a 5. He's not a floor spacer at all. They're not going to be able to play him with Wemby ever, unless he does expand that part of his game. They already have Luke Cornett under contract for 3 years, $30 million more. I think taking him in that spot, I think the Spurs are in a position where they probably could have swung more for another upside player, right? I think they could have taken a little bit more of a chance on someone. I think Chris Sinak would have made more sense for the Spurs in this case than Tyrese Reed, but that's just my overall feeling. Of course, the Spurs, if Quaintance becomes half of what was kind of expected a year ago in mock drafts, then they did just fine. I just didn't necessarily love the Reed pick.
Yeah, I have to agree with the Spurs for sure. I mean, Quaintance is a big question mark. It could be a great pick. It could be a not so good pick. I guess just time will tell. But yeah, the Reed was a little interesting, just taking 2 bigs there late in the first round. Cody, what are your thoughts on the losers, maybe the Spurs and the Hornets as well?
Yeah, I would agree. They're probably more on the loser side than they are the winner side. And there are real concerns with Steinbach, especially on the defensive end, translating. He's just a tweener. You can't really play him at the 5. He's not a rim protector. I think it's more of a swing on his offense, on the ball, continuing to develop, because he does a lot of good things. He's the best rebounder in the draft. I think it's him and probably Cam Boozer as the two best rebounders, but Steinbach's ability to high point the ball is just insane. So, and he's definitely going to address a need there. In the Spurs, I think they were just trying to find some impact players for right now. At least with the Tyrese Reed pick, with Quaintance, I think it's going to take some time with him, but the defensive upside is he could be the best defender in the entire draft. And you have, Quaintance and Wemby together, who I think those two can actually play together, because Quaintance can guard, pretty much any position. I guess he can guard 3 through 5 very comfortably. So I do think that will work out if Quaintance reaches his ceiling. But for my losers, I had the Bucks circled. It's mostly just because I was very low on Burries and Nate Ament, compared to consensus. I had Burries 17th on my board, and I had Nate Ament 22nd. So I just thought they kind of reached a little bit there. I just don't really see it with Nate Ament. The more I watch him, the more I evaluate him. I don't think he's a great advantage creator on the ball, and the interior scoring for a 6'10", 3-4 hybrid piece is very concerning. He is genuinely his rim scoring is the level of a 6'1", 6'2", slight frame guard. That's kind of what it came down to. with him. And like, I don't think the shooting talent is like so elite to where that's going to be able to offset everything. Like, I'm pretty concerned with his ability to impact, winning basketball at the NBA level right away, or even really down the road, unless he improves some things there. Burries, I just don't really view him as having an elite trait. I think he does a lot of things at a solid level, but I don't think there's any real upside with him. I know a lot of people have kind of comped him to like a Josh Hart, something like that. I view Burries as definitely a worse defender, worse rebounder, although he's fine there. A little bit more on-ball upside than a guy like Hart, but ultimately I just don't 100% see it with either one of those picks. I think they could have taken some swings, as a team that they just need talent really at this point after the Giannis trade. And I didn't personally love the return that they got from Miami. So, and I don't really think these guys are going to help all that much right away. And another one I was lower on, this is going to be an unpopular one. I was pretty low on what Sacramento did. I'm just not. For me, everyone loves Acuff. I understand that. Like, everyone thought that Acuff should have been maybe a top 3 or 4 pick. That's kind of all I'm seeing, kind of all over social media, which I disagree with, because I think he has a pretty low floor. He's arguably the worst defender in the draft, and I'm not super high on his one-on-one creation. Like, he kind of needs a ball screen. He kind of needs an off-ball screen to be able to free up some space for himself. But ultimately, I think he's going to be a good player overall. I think he's going to be completely fine, and I do think he's a high-level passer as well. But I'm pretty low on the one-on-one creation consistently at the NBA level, and he needs to be like one of the elite guards in the league. Like, he needs to be like a top 15 offensive guard to be able to, be worthy of being the 7th overall pick, in my opinion, just because there's so many other concerns outside of scoring. So, and I didn't like the Caravan pick all that much. I know he's like, I think everyone loves him, 4-year guy, won a couple national titles, but I don't think the defense is going to translate, because he's not a good athlete at all, and he's kind of relying on one skill, and it's his shooting ability. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that they can consistently run off screens to generate looks. He's just not super quick off the ball. So ultimately, I don't really think the Kings did all that well either.
Yeah, with the Acuff pick, would you have rather seen Flemings go there with him still on the board?
Yeah, Flemings was the number 1 point guard on my board, so I thought personally he should have gone 5th.
Yeah,
I had Acuff 11th on my board, so I actually had him as the 5th best point guard, depending on what you want to call Wagler. I would probably, put him in the point guard section. So I just have him a little bit lower than consensus. Although, I mean, he's going to be a solid player in the league. There's really no doubt about that. I just think there's a lot more downside than there is with some of those other guys, like a Flemings, like even a Mikal Brown. I think he has a lot of traits, and I think he'll put it together at some point at the NBA level.
Yeah, of course, everyone's really high on him just because he had that phenomenal year at Arkansas last year. But he definitely has some concerning things he does on the floor, and mostly on the defensive end, just like you said. Marcus, what do you think about that Kings pick at 7?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sell tickets, and people are going to enjoy it. They're going to look forward to watching him, especially earlier in the year. But the defensive, like Cody said, I do think firmly like he's the worst defender in the draft. Like, I don't really know as if there's a ton of other candidates there. I know like teams just went at him at the college level, and they're going to do the same here in the NBA. He's going to be a guy I think that can put up a lot of empty stats in Sacramento, because Sacramento is just in a really poor state right now. That team is not good and doesn't really appear to be looking any better for the time being. They've got a bunch of guys that are just kind of aging and putting up a lot of empty numbers at this point.
Mm-hmm.
DeRozan, Westbrook, Levine. I mean, Sabonis, I still think is a player that can help somebody, but he's just there kind of hanging out, putting up double-doubles every night. It's a very odd roster right now with kind of a mixture of we kind of talked about in the offseason last year. It's a mixture of like, it's almost like half the building wants to sell and half the building wants to keep it all together, right? So it's like rebuild or not, and they're just non-committal on either way. So it's just created a weird situation there. And it's probably why the Kings have made the playoffs once in the last 25 years, right?
Right. Yeah. I guess I can kind of see the pick just for the perspective of like the fans, and they're going to be excited about Acuff. They want to go see him. He was a big name, and a lot of people were really high on him. So I definitely get that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw out there? Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
There's one pick we haven't really talked about that I want to touch on briefly. The Warriors pick with Lendeborg. This has nothing to do with Lendeborg and his skill set, but I don't like the pick by the Warriors for the simple reason that, like, Lendeborg is going to be 24 before the season starts. What are we accomplishing? Like, do they view this Warriors roster as like ready to compete if healthy? I don't know. In this Western Conference right now, with what's at the top between Oklahoma City and San Antonio and Denver, I just don't really see this team being there. And then not to mention you've got other teams there in the mix, like the Lakers and the Rockets and the Wolves. I don't know. Like, it kind of feels like they're just fighting to get into the top six. That they're going to be battling for like play-in spot or not. I don't really know as if this pick made a ton of sense when they've got an aging roster. I felt like they should have been swinging for more upside, right? I think Lendeborg is going to be a good NBA player, but for the Warriors' sake, I don't like the pick because it's too safe of a pick for a team that has Jimmy Butler coming back off ACL, and they've got Steph, who's been dealing with injuries the last few years, and he's probably done here soon. Draymond, who is a shell of what he used to be. It's just a weird pick to me for a team that should be looking at upside at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if they were maybe thinking like he was going to make a direct impact and they were trying to go for like a 5-6 seed in the West. I guess I really don't know either. I mean, I kind of would have liked to see like Mara would have been probably a great pick there just to secure like a nice big. I feel like they haven't had a good big in a while. Or, I mean, I'm big on Swain, so Swain has a lot of upside, so I like that pick too. But Cody, let's hear your thoughts about the Yaxel pick to the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, not much more to add. I think that's the only reason you make the pick is because you think you're still going to compete, and I think you bring in one of the highest floor players in the entire draft in Yax, and I think there's a lot of things that he can do on the basketball floor, and there's a lot of positions that he can play. Like, he can realistically play 3 through 5. He played mostly the 3 at Michigan. He played the 5 at UAB and thrived in both roles. He's an elite rebounder. He can guard on the perimeter. Like, we saw him at Michigan last year, like guarding the opposing team's point guard, like all the time. Like, he was taking on the Braden Smith assignment when they played Purdue. I believe they played him 3 times or twice or whatever, but he was still taking on that assignment. And, the shooting's really come along. I think that's something that I think needs to continue to improve a little bit, but it's a guy like, what you're getting. And I think the instant impact is going to be there, but it's just when those guys are out the door, when Steph's out the door, Jimmy and Draymond, then where do you go? Like, Yax needs to be on a team that is going to compete to win. And I think in a few years, like, I think he can be one of the better role players in the entire NBA. And like I said, he's going to have an impact right away. Just strictly, like, a lot of it's because of the age and experience. And we have a 5-year sample size of what he's been. So, I mean, definitely an interesting pick, but I think when you look at the long-term vision for the Warriors, I would say it's not so great. I think you could take a swing on a guard, like any of those guards. I think, kind of take the guy that's next up after Steph, really. Like, you could have honestly reached and taken a guy like Ibuka Okori, a guy who has really high level upside. And I thought that's a really good pick that we haven't talked about yet for Detroit. They just need more scoring punch. And I think Ibuka Okori really provides that. He can give, some relief to Cade Cunningham with his creation duties. Corey's still a little bit raw. I think the turnover issues are real. He's not like a great processor for a point guard as like a playmaker, but the on-ball burst is absolutely insane, and the jump shot got really good as the year went on. So I do think that's a solid pick. There's a guy that can get into the lane whenever he wants. I think that creates somewhat of a high floor as well right away. So I do think we can expect the Corey to play a pretty big role for the Pistons early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, actually. I really liked that pick as well. I do have an idea that I want to throw out there. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. So we've talked about the Spurs, of course, a lot, I feel like, this episode. But do we like maybe if they had picked Phylon at 20 over JQ just because you got some scoring upside? I mean, clearly the guards were kind of a problem in the finals. He can play with bigs. I just want to hear you guys' thoughts. Marcus, go ahead.
I think the only reason you make that pick is if you're planning to package one or two of those guys that you have right now in a trade, right? If you were going to send Fox and Vassell somewhere for someone bigger, then maybe you do. But I think if you took Phylon there, it becomes too much, and he doesn't really fit in my opinion, the defensive archetype of what the Spurs want to do. He's not going to be like up in your space, physical, and he's not like that bigger guard, longer guard that they want on the defensive end. So, I think the only way that it would have made sense is if, like I said, if they were planning to make a trade,
right, and send Fox somewhere or something along those lines. Cody, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think their backcourt is pretty well solidified. It's just them not overreacting to what Fox did in the finals. Like, he was dealing with an injury. I mean, some of the things that he did throughout the finals were pretty inexcusable, and maybe the moment got to him a little bit. But I think they really trust Dylan Harper as well. Like, I think, and I personally think Dylan Harper is a star in this league in a few years once that backcourt is his. Like, I've been on here at one time a couple of years ago saying that Dylan Harper is a future scoring champ. And I do think that's something that can absolutely happen. So I think they're pretty well set with their backcourt. I think I'm personally okay with what they did. They're trying to address needs, and Terrace Reed, high floor player that I think is going to be kind of a per minute monster when it comes to rebounding and rim scoring. But no, he's not going to give you anything crazy. I think he can get picked on a little bit defensively, but I do kind of like what they did. I think they think they're in a pretty good spot on the wings and at the guard positions too.
Yeah, and I guess. Oh, go ahead, Marcus.
Well, just one more thing to add to that. I think the Spurs are in a unique spot where I think that Castle and Harper in particular are a little bit ahead of where they maybe expected them to be.
Right.
And I actually draw parallels a little bit to kind of the Celtics situation 10 years ago. When they drafted Brown and Tatum back to back, and those guys were both ready right away. They Brown his second year became ready. Tatum his rookie year, of course. So it's kind of similar in that eventually this is going to be Harper and Castle's backcourt, and that Fox won't be there. They made that trade for Fox last year because one, they didn't know they were going to land second in the lottery, right? And they thought that Fox could help them get over the top and really mentor Castle. But then Castle and they get Harper, and both those guys just flourished right away. So it kind of puts them in a unique spot that they probably didn't expect to be in, right? So they're going to make it work for the time being. I'd be surprised if Fox, like Cody said, I think Fox caught too much hate. He was injured. He's better than that. He's more explosive than what we saw in those finals. He's still a really good player in this league, and I don't want people to forget that. But he's not probably going to play that contract out in San Antonio. He's got 4 more years at 227 through 2030. I'd be pretty surprised if they let him be there until 2030. I think it's just going to get to a point where they have to move on because Harper and Castle are too good, in particular Harper.
Yeah, I agree. I think Yeah, I think Fox is definitely better, and I think that than what we saw in the finals. And I think that the fact they didn't pick a guard in those two picks is kind of giving Fox confidence. Like, okay, I still have this backcourt for now. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Harper and Castle are coming, and I think they're developing a little quicker than the Spurs expected. So
just took Jacoby Gillespie tonight, though.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
So
Yeah.
I was going to mention that. Are there any round two picks that we like? We're pretty close to all the way through it as we're recording.
Yeah,
but
I'm shocked that Vesar's still there.
Yeah, I think at this point with Vesar, it's just like he might be telling teams to not draft him anymore. It's kind of I just want to pick where I want to go and kind of bet on myself and pick the best landing spot for me. And I think at this point it kind of makes sense now that we're this far down on the board. But yeah,
I feel one more player in the first round. I feel a little bad for Joshua Jefferson because I think he's a guy that can help a winning team. Like he has a skill set that really caters to winning basketball, and he's a great passer, high IQ player. He went to Brooklyn. I just don't know what that's going to look like.
He's going to be the mature guy in that locker room in year one. It's insane.
He's going to be a leader almost.
Seriously. But yeah, no, second round's been kind of whatever, I guess. At this point, guys, teams are just taking guys they know will sign two ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've kind of sold myself on Richie Saunders a little bit as an NBA guy. I never really did until the last couple weeks. I think it's more like he's actually an extremely underrated defender and like an underrated athlete. Like I think a lot of the secondary skills are there for him. We know the shooting's great. He's a great cutter, and he can actually do a little bit, as attacking closeouts from that perspective. There's a little bit of burst on the ball too. So I'm kind of sold on what Richie Saunders can do, and Bruce Thornton. Those are two dream picks for you back to back to start the second round. But Bruce Thornton's size, even though he's only 6 feet tall, his burliness I think can play up, and I think he's a true 3-level scorer as well. So I did like those first two picks of the second round.
Yeah, I actually think there's a lot of talent in the second round. I mean, it's kind of as expected. All the guys that we thought were going to go second round are going. But I do like some of these guys having an impact right away, possibly. But anything else to throw out before we wrap things up?
Last comment, Koa Peat should have gone back to college.
Yeah.
We're kind of at that point. I'm personally not super high on Koa Peat. At least with his profile, it's a heavy mid-range diet. It's wingspan's not there. He's not a phenomenal switchable defender. So I'm a bit lower on him. I think the fact that he went in the first round, he kind of got lucky in my eyes, at least.
If you go back 5 years and you typed in 2026 NBA mock draft, Koa Peat was top 3 every time.
Well, after opening night against Florida, everyone thought he was going to win the Wooden Award. He was a top 5 pick. It's gotta tone it down a little bit. It's just he has a lot to work on.
Yeah. Let's pump the brakes a little. But we're gonna wrap things up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.